Welcome to Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. With Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, Bryan Cush from Sawdust Bureau, and Robin Lewis from RobinLewisMakes. Hi everyone, I hope you're all very well. This is episode 25, Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast. As always, I want to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you today?
Very good, Robin. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. And Bryan, how's it going?
I'm excellent, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good.
And my name is Robin Lewis. Welcome to the show, everyone. So on this episode, we have another guest from Melbourne. He's one half of a business focusing heavily on CNC with a very unique product line, I'd like to say. On the website, you'll find information on furniture, but also artwork, something we haven't seen a lot of on the show. So a very big welcome to Jem Selig-Freeman from Like Butter. How are you tonight?
I'm well, Robin. Thank you. Thanks for that unique introduction.
All right, so I guess what we'll do is, for anyone who doesn't know you, I mean, you've got a very big following on Instagram. That's where Joey and I have obviously seen you first. Bryan's known you for a while. But I guess for everyone else, your business, where did it start? How did it get to where it is today? Just, give us the origin story.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I'll try and give you the less rambly version. We'll see how we go. So my partner and now wife, Laura Woodward, is a sculptor, or a kinetic sculptor. And we met 2005, and in 2007 she had some stainless steel sculptures that needed to be produced. I did industrial design at uni. I was fluffing around doing not much, didn't know how to make anything. Laura needed this laser cutting done, and we thought, let's buy a plasma cutter, as you do. So very naively, we bought a sort of hobby kit, CNC hobby kit from the States, with a plasma cutter. And just other than making these pieces for Laura, we didn't really have any business intentions. We got this machine, tried to set it up in my sister's shed in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and didn't even know the difference between single phase and three phase power, and we were trying to run this 60 amp plasma cutter on a house circuit. And I was working for another artist at the time as an artist assistant, doing sort of 3D modelling for him, and he rented us a little corner of his workshop, and we set up the plasma cutter in there, and just sort of very organically, with no business plan, just set about doing CNC plasma cutting of metal panel products for other artists and designers, and that kind of just rolled from one job to the next. And we budgeted a little tool in here and there and slowly grew our collection. And that was kind of the origin story of how we got started.
So that's pretty interesting, because all I've seen is plywood work.
Yeah,
so
when did the transition?
Yeah, how did we jump from steel to plywood?
Yeah, well, Laura was the welder and the metalworker, so she taught me all of those skills, and we did metal fab for the first 3 years at least.
Okay.
Balustrades and gates and just straight profile cutting. And then I think it's probably 2009, I think it was, we started mucking around. We had a router attachment for this plasma cutter,
right.
So it's like a DeWalt, one of those cylindrical DeWalt hand routers that you could bolt onto the gantry. And we'd had that from the start, but we'd barely used it, and so I'd set that up and was starting to do a little bit of plastic cutting for some clients and a little bit of timber work. And one of our earliest products was the slot-together shelves, which Laura designed for our rental apartment, and we needed a set of bookshelves that we could pull apart and move between homes. So she designed that, and we started cutting that on our little CNC machine, and I think, we were sort of still very much mainly steel fab at that point. And then a friend of mine, Sonia Wrench, who was a designer and stylist who I'd worked with in my old day job at Moth Design. She was working for the State of Design Festival and in Melbourne, and just posted this brief to us that was, we need 200 pieces of furniture in about 4 weeks. Why don't you make it out of plywood? Yep. And really it just went from there. We made 200 pieces of furniture and rolled it out into the festival, and we still make that product line. It's been heavily resolved since then, but it's still one of our staple products. And from there, again, no intentions. We just became typecast as the plywood people.
Right.
You know, you get the work that you put out into the world, and so people saw this and the plywood boxes that we'd started. I made a batch of like plywood boxes from offcuts for family one Christmas, and a bunch of my friends wanted them. And then Instagram, this was around the 2013 when Instagram was sort of building up, and I think I'd recently joined, and people saw these plywood boxes and started ordering them, and we made 1,600 in the first couple of years, I think. And we're sort of well over 10,000 units now. We've numbered everyone.
No,
which is the only reason I know what we're up to.
It's so crazy how we had COC Design on the show a couple of weeks back, and they also got their initial work from Instagram. Now, someone who's relatively new to it, I wouldn't even consider Instagram being a place for that sort of income.
Yeah, it's been really powerful for us. Again, just a sort of organic thing. Like in the start, it was just very much my personal account. I was just posting whatever I wanted, just what I was doing, and some of that included making stuff.
Right.
But, you know, there's lots of other random stuff on there too, and I think part of the strength of our sort of organic following that we have now has come from the fact that it was just my personal account.
Right.
And it captured all the sort of playful antics and random stuff I was building, and very much aside from the business activity.
I reckon you're spot on there. Like the way people engage with your posts of your jig making and things, and the crazy inventions that you sort of come up with to complete jobs, definitely hit with people as opposed to just a glossy finish shot that you spend hours setting up and editing. But it's just that on the whim, set the camera up and you talking to camera, explaining what you've done, I think is what people love about your Instagram.
Yeah. And on occasion I will try and sort of use it more as a sales platform and put up the shiny photo. But typically I find that doesn't get, it doesn't actually do that much for us. It's the organic, on the fly stuff that it gets much higher engagement.
I think also I find that those pictures, like in workshop settings, like you might sweep a floor, sweep an area and have a relatively clean background or wall or something. Those pictures tend to look a lot more like the piece is going to look in your own home.
Yeah.
There's natural lighting, there's shadows, there's a bit of dust in the air, and that's what it's probably going to look like in your house rather than this perfectly polished photo session, which looks
Unless
great
you
for
live in
your
a concrete
website.
block or something.
Yeah, it looks great on a website, but it's pretty far removed from people's everyday living spaces.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed your episode with Ben Shanley recently when talking about his photographic style.
Yeah.
Definitely picked up a few little things from that I'd like to try. But yeah, I suppose just backtracking, the other bit of my backstory that's relevant to that is I finished third year industrial design and I enjoyed it, but I was not sure that was what I wanted to do. Like, industrial design was very much about designing cars and toothbrushes and consumer goods, injection molding, all that sort of stuff. And so I applied to do photography at the Victorian College of the Arts at that point and got in and was about to dive down an artist sort of road. And I think my dad talked me around and said, just, do one more year in industrial design, do honours. And that that broke it for me. Like I loved it by the end of that, and felt like, to some extent, like I've never really known what I want to do, and to this day I still often say that when I grow up I'll do something else. But industrial design was a really good sort of broad thing to study that worked well for me. Having grown up making billy carts and nailing bits of wood together, it was kind of the perfect course.
Can you talk about your workshop a bit? Because the sort of behind the curtain look is that Jem actually used to be my landlord. So my first workshop that I set up was in a shared workshop space that was run by Laura and Jem. So it'd be really interesting for people to find out how you came about setting up Ironside Studios and how long it ran for and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Ironside still runs.
Still there.
We're just not there anymore. Ironside Studios is Laura, my wife's brainchild. So she was a sculptor and came out of uni struggling to find any sort of shared studio space where she could use an angle grinder and weld and make noise. And so, as she is wont to do, she thought, well, I'll just set up my own. And she found this incredible site in the old Young Husband wool store in Kensington, a really rough site, and she started with about 700 square metres, I think. And one crazy summer we built 200 metres of wall out of stud and MDF, and people moved in, and I can't remember at what point you moved in, Bryan, but it was fairly early in the piece.
I think it was 2011 maybe?
Yeah, sounds right.
No, maybe 12 I think.
Yeah. And the studios continued to grow until we had a few thousand square metres of studios, and I think up to 80 people at its peak. All of which Laura managed. I didn't have much to do with it other than sort of a bit of housekeeping. But it was just...
It was a ballsy move, just signing a lease on a 700 square metre workshop in pretty much in inner Melbourne as well. Like, this is not out in the sticks. Yeah,
by the time it got to its peak, it was a pretty frightening... The outgoings were pretty frightening. And so, as these buildings do, it went to developers ultimately. And we moved out of there 12 months ago, basically, having built a new workshop from scratch in country Victoria. We toyed with renting or buying in northern Melbourne, and then at some point, after getting loan approval on a truly frightening commercial loan for a factory in Coburg, we realised that we could build from scratch in Castlemaine for less than the price of renting in Melbourne, and thought, we'd wanted to move to the country for a while, and we thought, let's make the shift. And we were pretty nervous about what that would mean for the business, uprooting our staff and our customer base potentially, but our key workshop staff have all moved with us.
Awesome.
And we haven't felt the dip in terms of that transition from the city. From a business perspective, it's been really positive.
How have you managed the clients from 2 hours away from Melbourne? Like, do you come down, you've kept a shop front, or...?
We've kept a small office/warehouse in Ironside Studios in Melbourne. So Ironside's got a new, smaller site, still in Kensington, with only about 25 studios now, which is much more manageable. And we've got a little space there, and Sarah, our business manager, operates out of that site. So she's got an office, and that's where we sort of hold a lot of stock for sort of day-to-day web orders and the like. And I was going down there once a week for meetings and site visits, but since the COVID situation has been in effect, we've just been doing a lot more video calls, and it's been great doing less of that travelling, to be honest. Yep.
So what kind of workshop size have you got now?
Just under 600 square metres on the ground. An office, which is where I am now, and a machine shop out there, and big roller doors and lots of natural light and cross ventilation. It's great. I love it.
Well, that picture that you've got on Instagram from it's sometime in June or July. You can see it's the middle of winter. It's very hazy outside. It looks beautiful. And then you've got a couple of other pictures. It looks like you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else around you.
I can see why it would look like that. We're actually in an industrial estate, but an industrial estate that is sparsely populated. I think we're one of 3 factories in a plot, like in a circuit, which could take up to probably 10 to 12 sites.
Right.
So it's lovely, there's kangaroos in the morning, and look across and wave to the distant neighbour who restores 1920s Bugattis, and it's a good spot.
It's funny, when we were chatting to COC the other week, they were saying, their workshop always has motorbikes and things lying in the corner, and that is my longest lasting memory of your workshop is that old VW sitting there.
That bloody car, yeah.
Talk us through what you were doing with that.
So it's still collecting dust, although it's in the car park now, so it gets washed with the rain and slowly rusting away. When did I start that? 10 years ago, probably. I thought I'll build an electric car. I'll convert some old thing and make myself an electric vehicle. And I shopped around and went through a few vehicle options, like a Series 1 Land Rover or a Volvo 240, and looking at the weight capacities and what might be suitable. And for some reason, I settled on a Volkswagen Type 3 Squareback.
Okay.
Having had no specific interest in Volkswagens prior to that. Anyway, I did a bare metal restoration, which was a grueling experience, and I'll never do it again. But part of me is glad that I went through that.
What is that? What is bare metal restoration?
Sandblasting the entire vehicle back to bare steel, welding all the little tiny rust holes, and
that's nightmarish.
Repainting the whole thing. And I did all of this in our Kensington workshop. The car, it's an old wool store, so the front step was like 800 off the ground, Brian.
Yeah.
And the door definitely didn't fit a vehicle, so we tipped this thing on its side to get it through the front door and into the workshop. Crazy times. Anyway, it's still sitting there. I never finished it.
Jeez.
It's one of
You got the
those
batteries
projects.
though, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I got it driving up and down the Kensington workshop at one point. Got it that far. And then the business got busy again, and it sat there. And then our place up here in the country is off grid and runs on a solar system. Okay. And the old lead acid batteries were dying, and I needed. We were going to have to splash on new batteries, and I realised I had this pack of really good lithium batteries sitting in this project, not getting used. That was the perfect capacity to just drop into the house. So the car batteries now run home.
So. If we get back to your workshop a little bit, I'm intrigued. I've got a small X-Carve CNC, and in my workshop we've got a router parts CNC, a kit set type, so it's a full sheet size CNC. Yep. So I'm vaguely familiar with what things can do, but if you are pumping out commercial quantities of plywood goods, have you got like more than one machine? Multiple head thingy-bobs, or is it just you've just got one good machine that is doing what it needs to do?
Yeah, I would say it's just one machine, and I would say it fits that category of just one solid machine. Right. It's an Australian-built multicam.
Okay.
We bought it 5 years ago to replace the original plasma cutter hobby CNC. And that just blew my mind. Like I haven't come from manufacturing, so I've never really known what's possible.
Yeah.
And going to see that multicam for the first time and seeing it cut through 20mm plywood in a single pass.
Wow.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that's been a really solid machine for us. Very reliable and really changed the business in terms of what we could do and produce reliably.
You're saying multi-cam? So what's that?
That's just the brand, the build. the machine builder in Australia.
Is it a multi-head machine, like a
single spindle?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's nothing fancy. It's just 3-axis. I
Yep.
would love a second 3-axis machine just
Yep.
to keep things moving, but single machine has been fine. And whilst I just end of 2019, I almost pulled the pin on a second machine, and I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, right.
I'm glad I don't have those repayments right now.
Yep.
And I was looking at 5-axis machines last year as well.
Yeah.
And again,
I was going to ask if that's the next.
Yeah.
That's the next logical step.
That's where I'd like to take it. Yeah. Partly just because that's what I'm interested in. I love learning new stuff, and I feel like there's always more to learn, but I feel like I've reached a point with the 3-axis machine which I want more, and a 5-axis machine is kind of the next logical step to expand into. And also sorry, you go.
Carry on.
I was just going to say, just from a business perspective, I'm aware too that 3-axis CNCs are sort of becoming more and more accessible, and more shops have them. And so if we want to sort of stay ahead and be, a little industry leader, that we need to sort of get into the next level.
Yeah, so I saw on your Instagram you were playing with threading a dowel and cutting a thread into it. And quite a while ago on the podcast, I was showing the guys that we had been working on these wooden jars, like a solid block of timber, and we cut the thread, and so it's got the two-part, it's got a screw-on lid, and it's a little bowl for taking cosmetics. It was a startup wanted to make New Zealand-made cosmetics. They wanted this wooden bowl, and so we eventually came to be able to route out of like a piece of 150 by 50. We could throw it on the router and cut like 10 bowls at a time and thread them in all sorts. But the time we spent drawing that in whatever CAD program it was drawn in, I think at the time I was saying to the guys it was probably around 80 hours of just constant drawings and trying it out to see what's going to work, feed speeds, how does this, like, I think we used the exact same thread cutter bit as what you were using, and just working out how that works and how it cuts, and like, so I understand that you're probably mostly designing to make more than one of each thing, but so you can afford to spend a bit of time in the design process. But who's the person working out what to, telling the CNC what to do? Who's that guy? Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Right.
I have, the thread cutting project's been a fun one, and I have sunk a lot of time into it, for sure. Late last year, late 2019, we won a big job for us doing components of an office fit out with one of our sort of key clients, who's a really great collaborator.
Is that all the whiteboards?
Yeah, that's the same client, the whiteboards, but these were these office pods, and I just thought, let's hold these office pods together with threaded dowels, having never threaded anything before, and I thought, that sounds fun. And so it was around that time, we were just generally pretty busy, and I finally broke my habit of not being able to get up early, and I just started coming into work at sort of 5:30 every morning.
Right.
And spending sort of 2 hours before the other guys got in, just mucking around with these threading fixtures and trying to get a reliable process happening. And I've basically been doing that for about 6 months, just, 4 mornings a week.
That's the time it takes to sort of master it. Because surely by this stage, I mean, you've got a pretty solid idea of what will and won't work.
Yeah, I think so. It's like any other tool. You feel it and hear it, and you get sort of intimately. You get intimate with how it should sound and feel, and I think it becomes intuitive at some level. But that said, For that same project, I also dived into learning Fusion 360.
Right.
And that has, like, the cam side of Fusion 360 is makes it really easy in a sense too. Like, you know, there is just a threading command. You select the cylinder and tell it what thread pitch you want, and it generates the G code. Like,
nice. That's simple.
It gets you started. Yeah. And you can then perfect it from there, but like it gets you across that sort of that hurdle that you might encounter otherwise.
And so how are you finding, I was interested because what drew me to this whole kind of thing about threads is I saw the picture with the disc with the dowel legs on it, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. How the hell did you do that? And then I read it said something about threading it, and I was like, holy crap, how does the thread hold? It looked like it was in birch plywood. How is it to thread on the edge grain of the plywood? My instinct says that you're going to start losing the odd bits of thread as the grain changes direction all the time. But
the birch ply is actually pretty stable.
Yeah.
I'd say that's probably the strongest substrate I've put a female thread into.
Yeah.
The weakness tends to be the short grain on the Vic Ash male thread. If you're going straight in, just because if you can picture the little V, it's like a tiny bit of short grain on each ridge of the thread, and so if you really stress, like if you over torque the joint, it will strip itself and fail. Okay. But actually in that desk design, none of the birch is threaded. It's all their sex bolts. You know what that is, where it's going through the panel and clamping it on either side. So it's going from Vic Ash to Vic Ash dowel rather than threading into the birch itself.
I see. That's cool. I really like that disc.
Thank you.
Cool idea.
So I think you're the first person we've had on the show who's not been purely commission design. So when you look at your website, you have the biggest product list that I think we've ever seen someone have on the show. It's amazing. It's incredible because we only have, you know, the one shot of the perfect slab table and then that's it. Do you find yourself, did you get there by accident, or do you find yourself preferring one or the other? Like, would you rather go the commission route or?
Last sort of 5 years, my answer to that question has been more product, please. Like, it's easier to manage from a business perspective. I'm not a natural leader or boss. I feel very self-taught in that respect, and so managing a team product is just so much easier to get good results, but also just manage the day-to-day of who's doing what, and people know what they're doing, and it's easier.
I reckon, I know you say you don't see yourself as much of a boss, but I reckon knowing some of your employees and watching the way they've learnt through the process, I think you're sort of hands-on enough that you're teaching them, but you're making them learn on the job. And I think you've ended up with much better employees at the end of it, and like much more confident of their own skills. No, I think you're a good boss. Having not worked for you, I think you're a good boss.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. It's a tricky balance. How much do you let them make mistakes and learn on their own, and versus how much guidance or looking over their shoulder do you do? And that's it's just a constant battle.
I think you covered it earlier, but how many staff have you got now?
Currently I've got 3 in the workshop and 1 business manager in Melbourne. I've had up to sort of 8 to 10 people on the team at one time, and that was too many, just for me personally.
Any horror stories? Anyone that went really pear-shaped?
No, I've been really lucky.
That's good.
I don't have any juicy stories for you there, unfortunately. Like everyone who's worked for us has been good in some respect, in most respects, and I've got some really great friendships with ex-staff who've gone off to do their own thing.
That's awesome.
And just a really loyal team now, all of whom have been with us for more than, or at least 5 years. So yeah, it feels like a good balance now. Like our capacity is greatly reduced to what it was even just 2 years ago, but this feels like a much more comfortable balance of having maximum of 4 of us in the workshop at any one time.
Joey, how do you go with managing someone? Do you feel like it's a natural thing? Because being a dad, I'm sure there must be like some elements.
Yeah, well, you don't want to treat your staff like a
translate.
5-year-old, but
No, obviously not. But well, I hope not. Otherwise, you might have the wrong employee.
yeah. So I find it pretty difficult because my expectations are so high. It seems. I expect like 10,000%, and like if I'm away for a couple of hours doing something and I come back, I expect that project to be finished. And when I see I come back and we're just milling up the timber, we're not even glued up yet, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have you been doing? I'm sure I could have done that like 20 times faster, and maybe I could have, but that's not the point. And so there's a certain amount of dealing with my massive expectations, and then dealing with the reality of that this person or people who are working for me and it's just natural that they're not going to have the same enthusiasm I have for the job, otherwise they'd be already doing it. So you've got to like just take it with a grain of salt, be thankful that you've got someone who's at least got the skills to manage what you put in front of them, albeit a bit slower, and often that's reflected in the pay as well. And if they can't get crazy amounts done, then you're not going to get the same amount of money as if you pulled your finger out and got lots done. And that's it's very difficult to. I was actually going to ask Jim, when people leave, like that's the hardest thing to tell someone that it's over. Have you had to say goodbye, or have people willingly said it's time for me to leave?
Well, that's I think part of my reasoning behind saying I don't think I'm a very good boss, because I've never let anyone go.
Right.
Oh, I tell a lie. Two, I did. We had a sort of significant downturn one year, and I had to let some casuals go.
Yeah.
But it's such a tricky thing. And there's a version of like butter, which is me and a bunch of robots in a shed by myself, and I've got a huge smile on my face. But that I know when I sort of stop and think about it, that's a fantasy, and I realize, just how valuable having a team can be. I no longer work 6 or 7 days a week.
Yeah.
For one.
Yeah.
We've since our business manager came on 4 or 5 years ago, she encouraged us to do a 4-day per week business model.
Yeah.
So we're just open Monday to Thursday. We've got Friday as a catch-up day if we need it, and I'll come in and do stuff if I need to catch up. But from a business perspective, we're just doing those 4 days, and that's been awesome for everybody. Good for me, good for our team.
Yeah.
Everyone can do their own thing and have other interests and other things going on the Friday, and that's been really good.
You mentioned before we started recording that you, because of COVID and everything, you're now on a 3-day working week, just to manage funds and orders and everything else. Is that an issue with running the machine and having enough time when someone's watching the CNC, or are you guys confident enough now that when you push cut you can just turn your back on the machine? Because I can't.
Don't even trust the machines, Joe?
Side note, but I set fire to our machine not that long ago.
Right.
From being a bit overconfident and posting a new program out of Fusion and not checking my plunge feeds and speeds, and was sanding at my bench, and I looked over and there's fire and smoke coming out of the vacuum table. But typically on a day-to-day sort of process level, most of our programs we've run before, and we know what the pitfalls are and the risks, and we can sort of set it up in the right way and walk away and do something else.
Yeah.
I would love to be in the business of like machining aluminium parts where I could leave a machine running all night.
Right.
But I think in timber industry,
Yeah.
there's always that fire risk.
Yeah.
Regardless of how well you set it up. And so, yeah, we're a single spindle workshop, and I would say that spindle is still underutilized. Like, we could be pushing so much more work through it. So,
right.
Today it probably only ran for 2 hours.
Okay, well, yeah.
But then the 3 days prior to that, it was running sort of 8-hour shifts every day. So it's just, we're a small shop and it ebbs and flows, and we don't sort of production manage it where we're trying to fill its time. Sort of, we're not trying to pack out production on the machine, because there's other things to do. There's an inbox full of quotes and things to paint and seal and sand and so yeah.
I'm interested to talk to you. I've never seen this before, and I don't know if you've invented this whole clip system, but it seems absolutely genius. And if you could describe to us maybe what's going on and who came up with that.
Yeah, sure. So that was something I developed 4 years ago, because we were making all these plywood boxes, which are just glued and bradded together. I think a friend, Tom Rogers, introduced me to brad guns. Again, I didn't know what a nail gun was. I bought a $20 brad gun at Bunnings and started stapling these plywood boxes together. And so 5 years of that was shipping all these crates around the country in a cardboard carton.
Fully made,
which is just shipping air, volume, which equals expense. And so it was very much on my hit list to try and come up with a way of flat packing these crates in a way that the customer could assemble. And I can't remember what the sort of genesis of that idea was, but in researching, I came across some like shipping crate systems for like break pallets that could break down.
Right.
That were using spring steel clips, or like they were big sort of flat steel things that would kind of work in a similar way of like grabbing a corner.
Right.
And providing tension. And so I did a little drawing and got some CNC wire bent samples done in spring steel, and I think did a couple of iterations before in sort of proving out the design, and it just worked really well. It's because it's not a glue joint, it's super tough. Like, you can drop the thing and the whole thing just flexes.
You're right.
Oh, I remember your slow-mo drop videos. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I did some drop tests off the balcony of sort of 5 meters of a traditional glue and brad box, and it just smashes apart. And then the birch sort of clip crate just bounces, and I think one of the clips sort of sprung off, but otherwise it just pop it back on.
Well, it's very, very smart piece of design.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like you need to patent it or something. If you came up with it, it seems like you can sell that idea to people doing the same thing as you in other countries. But
I had an inquiry from New Zealand yesterday of someone wanting to buy the clips, which hasn't actually happened before. I've always just worked to the principle of you get it out in the world and that's your patent.
Yeah.
Like, you just prove that you've done it.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in lawyering up and protecting a patent.
Fair enough.
I heard something the other day, I can't remember where it was, but it was to do with patents and how if you are into patents, what you are doing is you're trying to patent something for the future. You don't build something and patent it, because by that stage your idea has already proliferated out. So you need to patent something that someone hasn't invented, so when someone does invent it, flash that piece of paper and make that cash.
Collect, that's right.
Yeah. It's awful. It's such a horrible way to look at like the creative world.
Like,
I know. And Australia's got such a bad track record for design protection. I know, Brian, you're big on this and have been an advocate.
One great piece of news is that Matt Blatt, that I have slated on this show numerous times, are officially out of business.
Oh wow!
It was
probably
our episode, I
probably
reckon.
been sold and they'll reopen again under some other name. But for right now, they are gone.
Interesting.
So no more knockoff furniture on the high street for a while.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jim, on your website, you kindly list all the prices of your items, which was great, and used some really outrageously reasonable prices. So, for example, you've got these standing desks for not much money. And so, are you designing it so all the parts can nest in a sheet in an even amount, which is difficult as crap? Or are you designing it to fit what you actually need to make and then nesting it as best you can inside of the sheet?
Do you mean, am I doing a big production run and nesting all of component A in the most efficient?
Well, no, I guess that's a different level. But if you're making 100, you might do it that way. But I'm thinking you probably try and nest parts A to Z on one sheet, and you probably would try and get like 2 whole units or 3 whole units out of a sheet. But do you design it so do you tweak the design so the parts fit inside of a sheet without having to get 1 and a bit sheets of plywood? Or are you like, bugger,
basically.
I need 1 extra little piece from somewhere and I've got to buy another sheet?
A bit of column A, a bit of column B.
Yeah.
Certainly since sort of transitioning into Fusion and modelling parametrically, it's sort of optimised that workflow a bit, because I can model, say, the standing desk, nest it onto a sheet and go, oh, actually and I did this when I recently transitioned that product into Fusion. I thought, oh, I've got all this space on the sheet. I'll tweak some of the design parameters to try and sort of optimise and minimise the waste in that sheet. But typically when I'm designing a product from scratch, I'll do what looks right.
Right.
And then I'll nest it and I'll look at, if it's really terrible, I'll go back and optimise it. But typically when you do sort of enough of this, like all the dimensions in your head are dimensions that naturally nest reasonably well. So
3s and 6s and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. 290, 390, 590. Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing achievement to create something that is designed and made here that can compete on price with like the IKEAs of this world. Like hats off to you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
It's amazing.
It's a really interesting point, Brian, because as far as I know, because I have not ever stepped foot into an IKEA shop, so I don't know.
Lucky you.
But I would imagine that IKEA probably do some kind of edge treatment to all of their cut edges on their stuff, some kind of white edge banding or faux plywood edge banding. And so, Jim, are you doing anything to like the edges? So I know some of the panels of plywood I can get come with a plastic film, protective film on the sheet, and after we CNC or cut something out, we could just like spray lacquer the edge and it's kind of sealed and it looks pretty. That's a whole big step of labour for someone to do. So are you generally just leaving them raw plywood edges?
Typically, yes, we leave it raw. I'm glad you asked, because it kind of brings me to something that I've been thinking a lot about this week, about our future. I don't like the fact that we've put tens of thousands of products into the world with a raw, like with no finish on them. Because I wonder, while I might be happy with some real grubby plywood boxes as my bedside table, I wonder about the sort of shelf life of these sort of affordable products that we've put out into the world. Sure, they're Australian made and that's great, but if they're just going to end up in the bin, then that's not what I want to be achieving in my life.
So you're selling, like as furniture, you're selling, say, like radiator pine ply as like a bedside table
exactly.
instead of like the HPL version.
Yeah, correct. And, we can make the assumption of, the customer will oil it themselves, they'll look after it, but
probably
We
won't
don't
happen.
know. We don't know that. Yeah.
Can you sell them 100 mil of hard wax oil? And
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we should be doing. Like, there's so much more work that we need to do as a business to ensure that we're making affordable products, but they're affordable products that are going to last the test of time. Like, I was kind of workshopping some ideas this week about what, it's taken me 13 years to sort of think about what our mission statement might be.
right.
But I think my sort of work in progress is make affordable stuff that will last. That
Does
I'm
that go?
confident
Does that go as far as talking to like plywood manufacturers on the type of plywood that they're making, or?
Yeah, potentially. I'd love to use more local plywood. We currently use a lot of radiata, which comes out of South America, and a lot of birch that comes out of Europe, or some out of Finland, but some out of the Ukraine.
Yeah. So the radiata, New Zealand grows ridiculous amounts, and I buy cheap radiata ply, which is really nice on one side at least, which is probably the problem, I imagine, is finding a two-sided clean face plywood that really pushes the price up here.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you haven't looked at closer to home options? Is it just the quality of New Zealand ply, given that generally you only get one good side?
Yeah, basically. So Carter Holt Harvey, I don't know if that's the same mill that you get, but I know that's Australian and New Zealand tree stock. That's something I wanted to use their stock for years, but they don't do a BB or an AC or anything like that.
You can't get one. I've ordered one special and it was $300 a sheet.
Oh yeah, see, there you go.
It's not worth it.
But when we moved into the new workshop in Castlemaine, we bought a wide belt sander. So in the back of my head, I've been wondering, like, do we buy the lower grade stuff and just finish it ourselves?
Or could you throw a veneer on?
A what?
Could you throw a veneer on your own veneer on the B side?
You're talking real woodwork now.
Well, if you're gonna go that far, you've already got a sander and a CNC. It wouldn't be much more work to buy full layups of veneer, throw some glue on it, like put a cold press glue on it, and you could probably do like 5 to 10 sheets at once, and put 50 ton on it, and that's it. You've just pressed yourself. A sheet of veneer is going to cost you like $40. And you just turned a $50 sheet of plywood into a $200 sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
You got room for a nice big vacuum press in that 700 square meter workshop, don't you?
I would love a press.
Just put it out the back. There's no one there anyway. So
I would squash all sorts of things.
Yeah, you don't want vacuum press for that. You want a actual hydraulic ram, hydraulic rams in each corner, and you're putting 100 ton on it.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Talking about the standing desks, do they sell quite well?
Yeah. Did COVID see a spike in sales now that everybody's working from home?
Yeah, we did see a little spike. COVID has been sort of the strongest our web order sales have ever been. The commercial work definitely dropped off, but our loyal customer base who were stuck at home looking at their, what they had, were sort of really helping us throughout that period with small sales of bookshelves and crates and small desks and things. But that's something I was going to I mentioned about the clip crates before. Like, as a designer, I was so proud of that system, and I put this product up on the website, and I got a really strong response on Instagram from all the engineers and makers and designers out there.
Right.
But our customer base just see it and go, but it's got all these extra fiddly details on it. I'll just take the nailed one, please.
Oh, really?
And we still sell more of the glue and nailed version. And
you're kidding me.
Part of me just wants to delete them, take them off the web store. But, particularly at times like this, you don't want to sort of say no to any work. So, we keep making them.
And so it's not ideal to have a glue and nailed anything. But And the main problem is that you don't want to send a big volumetric object. Could you not flat pack it still, pre-drill it, and give them a handful of stainless steel screws?
Yeah. That could
and
be
a tiny little squeezy of Sally's PVA or something.
Yeah.
And so some instructions in a foreign language with a funny name, and wow, we're starting to really sound like IKEA here.
That's so sad. Like, I mean, the assembly with those clips takes how long? How long can you assemble one of those boxes?
A minute or two tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
I think that comes back to, it's our responsibility to educate our clients, and like I haven't done a great job of that.
Oh, I don't know.
Really
I think if you're talking about those slow-mo drop videos again and showing people the difference between the two, you've created something that is cheaper to ship, it's stronger, and it's aesthetically more interesting.
It's about design education too, though, right? Like, sort of appreciating the fact that you are reducing shipping, and the appreciation of a spring steel clip providing that fastening force, and
I can see that from my customer base, people love plywood. People who love plywood love plywood, and they love the aesthetic of plywood. As soon as you introduce that spring steel clip, some of my clients I know would say, it's too industrial for me. Hence the reason probably people are saying, can we have just a nailed one where I don't have this extra bar of steel, which might be a colour they don't want to introduce into their colour scheme, especially if they've got an interior designer telling them to buy it, and then no, we don't want the steel version because there's there's nothing else with steel, exposed or whatever. And
one of my favourite moments was we had a stylist request like 30 crates for a cover shot in one of these interior decorating magazines. I won't name names. And we shipped them 30 crates up to Sydney. And when they sent us the photo, like, they'd assembled them all inside out so they didn't have to use the steel clips.
No wonder you've got a complex about it. It seems to be a bit of a sore point for everyone. Jeez.
That's funny as. That's so typical.
Yeah, because people want that rustic. I would assume that rustic look, and that stainless steel is going to be very industrial.
Yeah. Can I just ask you a bit about the arts side of what Laura does as well, and how you interact with that in your business? And
sure.
Yeah.
I'll try and give you the short version. Is every 2 to 3 years we get the courage to take on a big art commission, and it's usually.
When you say big art commission, you mean big art commissions?
Yeah, well, the last one we did, which we still haven't gotten over, was big. Yeah, it was $300,000 to $400,000 budget. Public realm sculpture. I blame Laura because she's always the one applying for these things, and then we win the damn job. And so that took about 18 months to produce. That was this most recent job, and it's in Melbourne. It's between two towers that were being built, and it's a sort of 75-metre long fibre optic artwork with 22,000 individually controlled LEDs. Jeez. Everything about it is custom. We employed electrical engineers to produce custom circuit boards to control the LEDs. We machined, 150 aluminium enclosures on our machine to waterproof all these custom circuit boards. It was just bonkers.
Crazy.
Spent $60,000 on optic fibre.
What?
And it was a nutty job.
Is that the one on your Instagram? It looks like it's a lighting piece it just looks like what's that, vermicelli, that really thin. Is that the one?
That's the one.
The noodle.
The noodles.
The noodles.
And then on the day this twin tower complex was being handed over to the client, a water main burst on the 30th floor and flooded 50 apartments.
Jeez.
And so we never launched it. It's been the biggest anticlimax because we finished this 18-month project and we went overseas to Finland on an artist residency the next day. and came back, and it was like the building was still being repaired, and like we've never done anything with it. Like there's a hashtag on my Instagram which is like summer project or something that kind of documents the build, but that's about it.
So where is it now, Jim?
It's running, yeah.
Oh, it is running. It is.
It's just not officially
Docklands.
been launched or anything. Like
It's under the Marina Tower complex. If anyone wants to go and see it, it's that sort of slightly kinked, offset twin tower arrangement down in the Docklands.
Look for the drips.
So yeah, as I say, we tend to be pretty. That's the biggest one we've done, but we do them every few years. And Laura's got an active sculpture practice and has her own.
She teaches
work.
still as well.
Yeah, she teaches at the BCA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you guys do some amazing stuff, and your support as well for a lot of young makers out there. Like, I would never have found a workshop if it wasn't for you guys. And even things like I don't know, the Fringe Furniture program in Melbourne that you guys sponsor an award for that. It's just really nice to see a business that sort of gives back to the industry a bit, and you know, you're always there, maker drinks and making the effort. So yeah, it's cool.
Well, yeah, thanks, mate. We're lucky to have such a good community of makers. I mean, even just on Instagram, it's like there's so many good peers to connect to in the States and Europe and here, and just, you know, I really enjoy that aspect of that platform specifically. I would, from a business perspective, I would jump ship off Instagram any day and just delete the app and get away from it. But that community of makers and like-minded people just draws me back in, and the collaborations and conversations that come out of it are really important.
So with that in mind, where can people find your stuff?
Like Butter Melbourne is our Instagram hashtag, the Instagram handle. Our website is likebutter.com.au. And they're the main
Where'd the name
things.
come from?
The plasma cutter.
Cuts like butter.
Cuts steel like butter, yeah.
Right.
We drew a little block of butter with like butter on the label, and that was our first logo for a few years.
I like that.
That's awesome.
And it's just stuck as a really useful name. Back in the old days when I had a yellow pages listing, I had sort of a couple of calls of like how much per kilo.
Nice.
Yeah, I just like it because it's not, you know, obnoxious designs or something like, you know, we've seen it a million times. It's a really unique name.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's given me the flexibility over the years to do whatever I want with the business. Like we've just literally followed our tail or the client's tail, or just wherever the work has led us, we've gone. And the name has just followed with us and hasn't dated or become irrelevant to what we do.
Yeah. Cool. All right, I reckon we'll leave it there for today. So to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. That really does help us out. The Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and most other podcast apps. My name is Robin Lewis. Joey and Bryan, thanks very much for hanging out. Jim, once again, thanks so much for being on the show. We really do appreciate it. For those of you who follow the show, this is actually the first time that we're recording the show at night. So, you know, Jim, thanks for making yourself available this late in the evening.
No, pleasure. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Joey. Thanks, Bryan. It's been awesome to be on and chat with you guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Cheers, guys. Catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.